Good afternoon, everybody. This is the hard session because you've all had a nice lunch and you just want a nap now, so I hope I can keep you awake. And I met a teacher at lunch. I don't know what her name is, but she'll know who she is. And she said, oh, we've had a lot of content this morning. We need something buzzy. So if I have time, I'll do something buzzy, but we'll see how we go. A lot of what I have to say has already been said, so I'm going to take myself through my presentation and maybe reference that if I can. But when I was getting it ready, I had so much to say. I said I won't say anything personal, but thinking of Niall this morning, telling his story about Donegal, I have a little story that was a very formative moment for me when I was a primary school teacher way back a long time ago. And I went into school one morning. It was a country school, and I had 3 classes, and a little girl ran up to me and she said, "Oh, miss, thank God you're smiling today. We're going to have a nice day." And first thing I thought of was, do I not smile every day? And then it hit me and it stayed with me. She was a very vulnerable child. I didn't make that connection between my role in helping her by smiling every day, but her life in school hinged around me being in good humour. And that was a very, very, very big responsibility that I felt I had, because I had my own life. I was probably breaking up with some boyfriend or something, and I wasn't very happy. But I was bringing my unhappiness into the classroom perhaps on some days, and I wasn't even aware of it. So it's a huge responsibility for teachers, and I'm very aware of that. And the Headstrong research, which talks about one good adult, saying that to teachers can be kind of frightening, because teachers feel the burden of that. If I'm that one good adult, how can I be that one good adult when children are coming with emotional difficulties and I don't feel equipped? But the reality is that we have 1 in 4, probably, maybe 1 in 5 in some classrooms. Say take 30 children, you might have 5 children who are coming in with difficulties. That's the reality. So just taking that on board, then teachers do need to think about their efficacy or their skills or their competencies, and they need to be supported. So I'll talk a little bit about that in my talk. So the way forward, a tall order. Now I have to learn how to use this. So the way forward with the clicker. Some mention has been made this morning about the Wellbeing guidelines. The Wellbeing guidelines were developed as an action from Reach Out. Reach Out was the strategy for suicide prevention, which set one of the actions was the development of a framework or guidance for schools. Schools were clearly identified as a location for supporting emotional well-being, for addressing the issue of suicide. And so in 2013, guidelines were developed for post-primary schools and published and issued. That was a cross-departmental, interdepartmental piece of work. It was challenging because we've mentioned already the difficulties of getting agreement and coherence. Primary school guidelines were then published early this year, and they've been issued, copies issued to all schools. And in Connecting for Life, which is the next strategy, An Taoiseach launched that in May. Our department has given a commitment, Department of Education has given a commitment to supporting the implementation of those the wellbeing guidelines, and sees that as a very important action. Okay, so what's in the guidelines? The guidelines are not saying anything new, and they really were pulling together, and there's been some conversation this morning about language and use of different language and understanding language, and maybe not coherence in the language you're using, and I think Suzanne mentioned it in her presentation. The guidelines bring together elements that are already there in the system. For example, the continuum of support. Support for all, some and a few. Pat mentioned that, he said I'd be talking about it. Support at the whole school level, support for all children, and then support for some, and that's an early intervention, prevention, and then support for the few. So the all would be what we're talking about, the school environment, creating an environment that is conducive to well-being promotion, and then identifying the ones who have particular needs and maybe putting interventions in place for those that are maybe group interventions, programs specifically tailored to their needs, and then few. That will need the support from external agencies. So the idea being that we can limit the numbers that need external support by harnessing the resources in schools in a way that's effective for the few who have some who have difficulties. Okay, so what other elements are in it? I'm throwing this one in before I go on to the next piece, because I really liked this slide. And the reason why I liked it was it's an OECD slide. So that's coming out of economy and the workplace, concerns about that. And there is a real realization now that we need to be putting resource and money into this area, because there is a connectivity between the cognitive and the social. The cognitive skills beget skills, but the skills that we develop in the social and the emotional domain support the development of academic skills. And that's a key message that we need to really believe. It needs to be embedded in our belief system. We maybe talk about it and we think about it, but we don't actually, I think, always believe it. If we're going to, the role of school is to understand that it's a place to develop the whole child, who should leave school with a balanced set of cognitive, social and emotional skills, able to face the challenges of the 21st century. And we've all kind of faced the challenges of the 20th century, a lot of us more so than the 21st century. So it's a new world, particularly the area, social media is significantly impacting on how we live our lives. So the challenges are challenges that we don't know necessarily about, and we have to prepare children for challenges that we don't really understand, or new challenges. So I would say well-being needs to be understood as an educational end in itself and not just a servant of academic achievement. And that's from a really interesting book that I got last week, sent to me. It's The Connected School. And if anybody wants my presentation, the references will be in it, and I can make it available through the IPPN. So back to the guidelines, the Wellbeing guidelines and the construct of them. In the Wellbeing guidelines, the health promoting school process is embedded within the guidelines. And Joan Ita was here this morning. She was on, I think she's in the audience. The health promoting school process has been around since the 90s, and then it was kind of revamped and redeveloped, and I know they're reviewing it again. But it's a process that really matches with school self-evaluation, the inspectorate process for schools looking at themselves, because it's a process for a school to reflect on itself as a place where health and well-being are catered for. So that's a really important, and the health promoting school process fits into the school support for all, or school environment, the school culture, school ethos, all of that area, and looking at that. So that's a really useful process for schools to access. This is a slide I've taken from the health promoting school process. It's a jigsaw, and I think jigsaws were mentioned this morning. Interlinking, interconnecting. Connectivity is a theme maybe that runs through my presentation, and Niall talked about connectivity this morning. Connectivity is really, really important for young people to feel that they are connected and belong to school. That is a powerful protective factor for them, and it will ameliorate the effects, negative effects that they may experience if they are living and if they are feel connected to their schools. And that's a huge responsibility on schools, but it is worth thinking about the powerful protective place that school can be for young people. And I suppose we've heard this morning, as Clive said, that school is working for probably 75-80% of students, but there are those ones who are vulnerable and they do need support. Self-care is essential for teachers. And again, I talked about that, the headstrong and the worry. Teachers need to be supported by the school systems that they work in, and they need structures to be in place to support them. Often teachers feel overwhelmed because they maybe don't have the backup and the support. So that's something that really is important for schools, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So this jigsaw is going to I'm going to go around the jigsaw and just talk about the elements: environment, curriculum, partnership and policy. Just a few words about each. Democratic environment. I think this is probably, was alluded to as well this morning. I think a few speakers have talked about listening to the voice of the child. And we have TUSLA now and more emphasis on that. So we need to think about that some more and really embed that. I think that democratic leadership and distributed leadership in schools is important. that the voices of all are heard in schools, staff, parents, the wider community. I'm really, I think IPPN are to be congratulated, and I'm really excited about the idea of the Centre for School Leadership. The Department of Education and IPPN and NAPD are coming together, and it's a very important symbolic and practical development to coordinate and develop school leadership programmes. Professional development for the leaders in schools in developing and understanding emotional well-being has taken an important step here, I think, today. I think it's really, really good that leaders, IPPN, NAPD, see this as being important. And if the leaders in schools believe in it, it's more likely to happen, happen some more. I think there's a lot here that's not new. I've been working in this area for a long time, and a lot of the things that are being said today have been said before. So, okay, this is a piece of work that we're currently involved in. We published these, NEPS, Department of Education, we published these guidelines for schools, which are related to student support teams. It was for post-primary schools, and it is applicable maybe for big primary schools as well. But we're currently engaged in a project, a collaborative agency project between the National Behaviour Support Service and the City of Dublin Psychology Service, ETB. And we're learning a lot through working with 17 schools. The reason we thought this was really important, it's not that there was anything new about student support care team, but we felt there was a need to coordinate and bring a coherence to the language that was being used. And I think Suzanne mentioned this morning, schools talk about things, and they hear maybe what they're doing described using different language, and then they don't realise they're actually doing what is being talked about. So this brings a coherence, and we really are learning a lot about the challenge it is for schools to put structures in place. But if schools have good structures in place, it will help to improve the environment of the school, and it will help and be, in the longer term, more effective for them. Okay. Just to give you an idea of how having a good student support structure in place with roles and responsibilities set out, it's going to impact on school self-evaluation, literacy and numeracy strategy, DESH planning, school policies, anti-bullying procedures. These are all the things that you're required to do. If you have good structures in place, it'll support you in doing these things. 2 minutes, okay. So, again, moving on around the jigsaw policies. There's a lot of policies out there. Sometimes schools think they're standalone. They're not. They can be. There's a lot of overlap. So connecting all these policies here are linked to the nurturing school. Okay. On to curriculum. SPHE, there's a lot of talk about new subject, well-being, as a new subject. Wellbeing is not a new subject. SPHE has been part of the curriculum since 2000. It's as a compulsory subject. It's compulsory up to junior cycle, and elements of it are compulsory at senior cycle. So it has been there, and I think Niall mentioned the things that young people said they needed. They needed to good communication skills, social skills. He had a list of things that he said. These are all part of what the SPHE curriculum is about. And just recently, we put up on our website a document to support the implementation of the primary guidelines. I felt that there was a need to bring together in a coherent way all of the materials that is available to schools to support the implementation of SPHE at primary level, and also programs that support emotional well-being. There's a raft of things. Pat mentioned Friends for Life programme. There's Zippy's Friends. There are lots of programs, and many have been mentioned, but they're all outlined in that document, a resource. But it's on the NEPS website, within the Department of Education website. So that's useful, and we could probably think about doing it for post-primary as well. Also, post-primary well-being subject is being introduced in 2017 as a compulsory subject as part of the new junior cycle. I would say to you, it's not new. SPHE was there. We need to be teaching SPHE, and in particular, all teachers, particularly post-primary, because primary teachers are SPHE teachers, but all post-primary teachers, I would say, need to be able to teach SPHE, or they need to be supported when issues come up in the classroom that relate to SPHE type things. I think that if we could have a postgraduate course that would teach, would cover the SPHE, that would be for every teacher, that would be a really useful development in the system. And I'm conscious. This is the NEP's problem-solving framework. Stop me. Will I stop now? If I can soon. Okay. This is just an application of the continuous support. It's the problem-solving. We haven't introduced waiting lists in our service because we would have been overwhelmed, like as was mentioned, Rosalie mentioned this morning. But we do have this problem-solving framework, which is part of the continuum, and we would say to you, have a look at that, okay? This is work done in Donegal. They seem to be ahead on everything. In Donegal, after the publication of the Wellbeing Guidelines, they put this document together, and it's essentially all of the supports for schools that are available in Donegal County based on the continuum support for all, some and a few. It's useful and it's available if anybody wants to see it. Okay, it's on to the buzz time and the reflection, but I'm told I have to stop, so I will stop and leave you there. My key messages are SPHE is for all to teach and is really important, and connectedness is the key to keeping children in school, particularly the 20% who may be feeling vulnerable or who have additional needs. Thank you for your attention. Bye.